And what happened was that when we got the go-ahead for this
way, but certain circumstances within the relationship and family environment.
A single confession shattered decades of silence. Julian Lennon, now 62, dropped a bombshell with just a few chilling words. "I utterly hated her." The world froze. What could possibly push him to say that? The truth behind those words isn't pretty. It's raw, heartbreaking, and tangled with betrayal that fans never saw coming. This isn't just a family drama. It's a story of fame, resentment, and survival that rips open the polished image of rock royalty. What could make the son of a music legend carry a wound that deep for so long? Today, we're diving into the truth Julian Lennon buried for decades, a truth no tabloid dared to print. Before he became the son the world pitied, Julian was just a kid lost in the shadow of greatness. He wanted something simple: love, normalcy, peace. But in the Lennon household, happiness was a stranger wearing a fake smile. From the outside, it looked like glamour and gold. But behind closed doors, it was heartbreak. The day John Lennon walked out, he didn't just leave for someone new, he left behind a broken family. Julian lost more than a father that day. He lost his safety net, his hero, and his sense of belonging. No goodbye, no reason, just silence and confusion.
You know, you go to security, they give you a sticker saying John Lennon, and I'm going...
Live that sort of fairy tale life forever, honestly. And probably the best thing that happened then was meeting John and having Julian.
Cynthia, his mother, carried the weight of it all. Selling family treasures, taking odd jobs, doing whatever it took to survive while the world assumed she was living large. While fans imagined mansions and money, reality was cold rooms, second-hand clothes, and nights filled with fear and uncertainty. And fame? It brought him no comfort, just cruel curiosity. At school, his last name made him a target. Kids thought he had everything, but all he felt was emptiness. They mocked him, pushed him, even hit him. And the teachers turned away, convinced he didn't need help because of who his father was. No one saw the pain behind that famous name. His mother was his only shield. Her sacrifices became a fragile wall standing between Julian and a world that seemed hell-bent on breaking him. She was his fighter, his protector, the one person who never turned her back when everyone else did. Julian learned early that legends only matter to the outsiders. Inside the family, the truth is cold, loneliness, not glory. While fans screamed for the Beatles, he was just a kid trying not to fall apart. His life wasn't built on fame, it was built on survival, pure and simple. He grew up haunted by a cruel contrast. A father praised for peace and love, yet rarely showing either at home. While the world worshipped John Lennon like a saint, Julian saw only the emptiness of broken promises and missed birthdays. The world called him a visionary, but to Julian, he was just a stranger who walked away. And then came the final twist of the knife: John's devotion to Sean, Julian's younger half-brother. The papers called John a loving, gentle father, but to Julian, it felt like a slap in the face. How could a man who preached love turn his back on his first son?
And that's hard. That's hard on the...
Rumors swirled everywhere. People whispered that John had once called Julian a mistake, while saying Sean was born from love. Even if the stories were twisted over time, the sting never faded. Every headline, every photo of his father smiling with Sean was a reminder that he'd been left out in the cold. Cynthia tried her best to fill the void, but the pain ran too deep. John's image was everywhere, on posters, in songs, in documentaries, a ghost that refused to let Julian heal. As he grew older, the bitterness only hardened. The relationship between father and son was never close, just forced calls, stiff handshakes, and awkward silences. John's love was loud and public, just not for him. He made sure the world saw him as the perfect dad, but for Julian, that picture was nothing but an illusion. For Julian, there was never that same love or effort. He watched from the sidelines, aching to believe he mattered, but deep down he always felt like an outsider. Sometimes a small gesture, a guitar sent, a kind word shared, would spark a tiny flame of hope, only for it to die out again in cold silence.
A few that I've left that I felt very uncomfortable being.
Struck by, oh, is it really you? But they don't really hear your order, you know?
He kept craving a real bond, a father's guidance, something genuine. But every time he reached out, that hope was crushed. The rejection, the unfairness, it all built up until he stopped expecting anything at all. The father he needed was gone long before the world lost him. So Julian built armor out of disappointment, walls so thick no one could hurt him again. Then came the day that would change everything forever. The world froze. John Lennon was gone, shot outside his own home. Headlines screamed, the death of a legend. But for Julian, it wasn't a story. It was heartbreak. He wasn't in a crowd mourning a hero. He was a son, quietly breaking apart in the shadows. He'd spoken to his father just days before. There'd been something different in John's voice, softer, almost hopeful. Maybe, just maybe, a second chance was coming. But fate didn't care. That tiny spark of reconciliation was ripped away in one brutal moment.
Just to get through this.
You know there's something wrong.
I was thinking, how am I going to do that?
Julian's grief wasn't loud. It was deep, private, suffocating. No funeral, no goodbye. Yoko Ono announced there'd be no public service, only a request to honor John's dream of peace. But what about Julian's dream of hearing his father say, "I'm proud of you"? That dream died with the man himself. The last words John ever spoke to him echoed over and over, not because they were touching, but because they were final. The world cried for a legend. Julian cried for the father he never truly had. And then came the final blow, the will. When it was read, the truth hit like a punch to the gut. John had left almost everything, his fortune, his music rights, his legacy, to Yoko and Sean. Julian got a small trust fund, a token gesture that said louder than words, "You don't belong here." This wasn't about money. It was about being erased from his own father's story. The betrayal cut deeper than any headline could show. So Julian fought back. He launched a grueling legal war, years of courtrooms, sleepless nights, and constant headlines. It wasn't just about inheritance anymore. It was about identity, about finally being seen, about reclaiming his place in the legacy that had shut him out for so long. People got it all wrong. They called Julian greedy, said he was chasing money. But that couldn't be further from the truth. For him, it wasn't about the cash. It was about respect, about reclaiming the part of his story that had been stolen. It was pride, pure and raw. Yeah, the final settlement was rumored to be massive, but no amount of money could patch the wounds of being pushed aside for so long. And while the lawyers battled in court, another war was happening in silence, the one between Julian and Yoko Ono. She was everywhere, the gatekeeper of John Lennon's memory, the woman who changed everything. Every time their paths crossed, the air turned icy. Those public events? Just masks, fake smiles, stiff hugs, and eyes full of tension. For nearly 20 years, every meeting reminded Julian that Yoko held all the cards. He hated that she had control over his father's legacy, and deep down, he blamed her for most of his pain. To him, She wasn't a stepmother. She was the symbol of everything he'd lost. But life has a way of shifting things, even the heaviest grudges. The anger that once fueled him started to fade. A photography exhibit here, a quiet encounter there. Slowly, tiny moments began to melt the ice. He realized holding on to hate didn't bring peace. It only kept him chained to the past. And for Sean's sake, Julian knew he had to let some of that go. The drama turned into silence, and the silence turned into a fragile truce. They'd never be close, never a real family, but Julian stopped fighting. Not for Yoko, but for himself, for his sanity. Through it all, his bond with Sean became his lifeline. Despite growing up in different worlds, one soaked in fame, the other in struggle, they shared something powerful: pain. That pain turned into understanding, and understanding turned into brotherhood. At first, jealousy and distance kept them apart, but as adults they found each other, two sons trying to heal from the same ghost. Late-night talks, sharing music, laughing at old home videos. It all started to mend something broken inside Julian. Sean's kindness showed him what forgiveness looked like. For the first time, Julian felt like he truly belonged, not just to the Lennon name, but to something real, something human. The silent feud with Yoko? It lost its meaning. None of that mattered anymore. What mattered was protecting his bond with Sean, the only part of the family that ever felt true. Julian finally learned that peace doesn't always come with grand gestures or public statements. It comes in the quiet choice to let go, to breathe, and to move forward. Still, breaking free from the Lennon name was never easy. No matter where he went, people saw his father's shadow following close behind, comparing every move, every note, every word to a legend he could never escape, but he could never outrun the music. Every time Julian picked up a microphone, the world expected another John Lennon, not Julian. His first passion became his biggest burden, crushed under endless comparisons and disappointment. Fans wanted a reincarnation, not a new artist finding his own rhythm. The pressure was brutal. It forced him to reinvent himself just to breathe again. So he turned the spotlight away from the stage and toward something quieter but just as powerful: photography, writing, and art. These became his escape, his truth. They gave him identity when the world refused to see him as anything more than John's son. He stopped chasing applause and started living for himself. And that changed everything. Even now, with every new Beatles documentary and nostalgic headline, he can't fully escape the past. But this time, it doesn't control him. Julian no longer lives under that shadow. He carries it, proudly but peacefully. He found purpose not by forgiving the past, but by building a future that's his own. He chose to honor his father's memory through creativity, compassion, and quiet strength, not imitation. The Lennon name stopped feeling like a cage and became a legacy he could finally own. His story isn't some glossy tale of easy forgiveness or overnight healing. It's raw, painful, and real. When Julian said, "I utterly hated her," those words carried decades of hurt, missed moments, broken connections, and the scars of a family torn apart by choices no one could ever take back. But somehow, through all that chaos, he found something close to peace. A fragile truce with the past that let him breathe again. Julian Lennon's journey exposes the true cost of fame, the myth of the perfect family, the loneliness behind the spotlight, and the power it takes to rebuild your life when the world only sees your last name. If you've ever struggled to forgive or wrestled with your past, his story is proof that healing doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be real. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And stay tuned for more untold Hollywood legends right here on Secret America channel.